The billionaire next door never smiled, until my daughter asked him to be her pretend daddy for show and tell. The iceberg at number 42. We lived at number 40, a modest bungalow that always looked like it had just woken up from a nap of toys on the lawn, a slightly crooked mailbox, and the warm, chaotic energy of a single mother trying to balance freelance graphic design with raising a 6-year-old tornado named Lily. Number 42, however, was a fortress. It was a sleek, hypermodern cube of glass and dark steel that seemed to judge our overgrown hydrangeas. It belonged to Mr. Arthur Sterling. Arthur was a hedge fund titan, a man whose net worth probably exceeded the GDP of several small countries. We knew this because he was occasionally on the business news, looking sternly at a camera while tickers scrolled beneath his face. In person, he was even colder. He was a man in his late 50s, always impeccably dressed in charcoal suits, with silver hair that never moved in the wind and a face carved from granite. In the 3 years we lived next door, I had never seen his teeth. Not once. He didn't nod when he collected his mail. He didn't wave when his black town car whisked him away at 6:00 a.m. sharp. He was, as Lily dubbed him, the robot man. I had resigned myself to living next to a human iceberg, warning Lily never to bother him, never to let her soccer ball cross the invisible demilitarized zone of our property lines. I thought I understood the boundaries. I was wrong. I didn't realize that my daughter, with the terrifying fearlessness of a 6-year-old who desperately wanted to fit in, was about to shatter those boundaries with a single, preposterous question: the silence of wealth. Living next to Arthur Sterling was like living next to a vacuum. His house made no noise. There was no music, no barking dogs, no laughter, just the occasional hum of an expensive HVAC system and the soft crunch of gravel under his tires. Lily was fascinated by him. To her, he was a storybook villain living in a castle. "Why is he so mad, Mommy?" she'd ask, watching him through the slats of our wooden fence as he inspected a microscopic imperfection on his front gate. "He's not mad, honey," I'd lie, trying to scrub crayon off the wall. "He's just very busy. Important business people have a lot on their minds." "He looks lonely," she decided one afternoon. "He has billions of dollars to keep him company," I muttered, exhausted by my own overdue bills. It was uncharitable, but his conspicuous consumption, the rotating cast of luxury cars, the army of landscapers who maintained a lawn no one ever walked on, grated on me when I was deciding between buying new sneakers for Lily or paying the electric bill on time. His presence was a constant, silent pressure. If my trash cans were out an hour too long, I felt his disapproval radiating through the drywall. If Lily laughed too loudly in the paddling pool, I'd find myself shushing her, terrified of disturbing the giant next door. He was a neighbor in geography only. In reality, he was an alien species studying us with disdain. The family tree crisis. The catalyst for the disaster began, as many things do, in first grade. Lily's teacher announced Family Month. It was meant to be inclusive, celebrating all kinds of families, but for a kid whose dad took off before she was 2 and hadn't sent so much as a birthday card since, it was a minefield. They were tasked with creating a live family tree for show and tell. They had to bring in photos, artifacts, and talk about who made up their home. Lily came home that Tuesday quieter than usual. I found her later in her room, staring at a piece of construction paper. She had drawn a stick figure of me, big hair, holding a computer mouse, and a stick figure of herself, smaller, holding a cat. Beside them was a gaping, empty space where a third figure should have been. "Sarah's dad is a fireman," she whispered, "and Tommy's dad can do a backflip." My heart broke. I sat on the floor with her. "Our family is a triangle lilybug. You, me, and Barnaby the cat. That's a strong shape." "It's too small," she said, her lower lip trembling. "Everyone else has more branches." She wasn't sad that she didn't know her biological father. She didn't remember him enough to miss him. She was sad because she felt incomplete compared to her peers. She wanted a prop. She wanted to fit in. I hugged her tight, promising her that our little triangle was perfect, but I could feel the gears turning in her small, determined head. I just didn't know those gears were turning toward number 42, the ambush at the hedge. 2 days later, I was on a conference call, trying to explain to a client why their logo couldn't be more popping, when I realized the house was too quiet. I looked out the kitchen window. Lily was in the backyard, but she wasn't playing on her swing set. She was standing by the low section of the hedge that separated our yards, her chin resting on the top of the fence. And on the other side, froze mid-step on his way to his car, was Arthur Sterling. He looked as if he'd encountered a talking badger. He was holding his leather briefcase like a shield. Lily was talking, fast. Her hands were gesturing wildly. I dropped my phone. I didn't even bother mooting the client. I bolted out the back door, my socks slipping on the decking. By the time I got within earshot, Lily was finishing her pitch. So you see, it's only for 20 minutes. You just have to stand there and look tall, and maybe wear a tie that has ducks on it because that's friendly. I'll do all the talking. You just have to be the daddy branch. Arthur stared at her. His stony expression hadn't cracked, but his eyes were wide, blinking rapidly. It was the first time I'd ever seen him look anything other than bored or irritated. He looked completely bewildered. "Lily," I hissed, grabbing her shoulder and pulling her back from the fence. She looked up at me, innocent as a lamb. "I'm fixing the tree, Mommy. The statue speaks." I pulled Lily behind me, turning to face the billionaire. My heart was hammering. This man could probably buy the company I freelanced for and shut it down out of spite. "Mr. Sterling, I am so sorry," I gasped, mortified. "Lily knows she isn't supposed to bother you. It's school project week and she's got an active imagination. Please forgive her intrusion. It won't happen again." I was babbling. I expected him to snap at me, to threaten legal action for harassment, or simply to turn his back and walk away, dismissing us as the nuisances we were. Instead, he just stood there. He looked from me, red-faced and panting in my sweatpants, to Lily, who was peeking out from behind my leg with hopeful eyes. He cleared his throat. It sounded like gears grinding that hadn't moved in a decade. "Daddy branch," he said. His voice was a deep, resonant baritone that seemed too big for the backyard. "It's for show and tell," Lily piped up, ignoring my frantic shushing. "We need a whole family. You look like a grandpa daddy. You know, serious, like you own a bank." I wanted the earth to swallow me whole. "Lily, that is rude." Arthur looked at his watch. Then he looked back at Lily. The silence stretched for an agonizing 10 seconds. "When is this presentation?" he asked. I stared at him. Lily answered. "Friday at 10:00 a.m., Miss Davis's room, room 1B. "I see," he adjusted his cuffs. "I will check my calendar." Then without another word, he turned and walked to his car. I stood there in the grass, stunned, watching his taillights disappear. The impossible acceptance. I expected nothing. I assumed checking my calendar was billionaire speak for go away, peasants. That evening, an envelope was pushed through our mail slot. It was thick, cream-colored paper with his embossed monogram. Inside was a typed note, concise as a contract. "Ms. Daniels, I have cleared my schedule for Friday morning between 9:45 a.m. and 11:00 a.m. I will assist Lily with her academic requirement. Please provide me with the necessary parameters of the role so I may prepare adequately. Arthur Sterling." I had to read it 3 times. I sat at the kitchen table, laughing nervously. It was absurd. It was insane. The man who hadn't smiled in 3 years was going to pretend to be my daughter's father for 20 minutes in a first-grade classroom. Lily, of course, took it in stride. "See, I told you he was lonely." Why was he doing it? Was it boredom? A strange midlife crisis whim? Or was it possible that beneath that titanium exterior, Lily's bizarre request had actually touched something? I wrote back a hesitant note thanking him and explaining that he really didn't need to do anything other than show up and stand next to her while she presented her poster. I dropped it in his formidable, polished brass mailbox, feeling like I was feeding a letter to a dragon. The billionaire in the playroom. On Thursday afternoon, Arthur Sterling knocked on our door. It was the first time he had ever stepped on our porch. When I opened the door, the contrast was comical. He was wearing a navy pinstripe suit that probably cost more than my car. I was wearing leggings covered in cat hair. Behind me, the living room looked like a toy store had exploded. "Mr. Sterling, please come in," I said, trying to kick a stray Lego under the rug. He stepped inside, his eyes scanning the chaos with an unreadable expression. He didn't sneer, but he looked deeply out of his element, like a polar bear dropped into a jungle gym. "Lily stated that I required prepping," he said stiffly. Lily appeared holding a clipboard. "Okay, training time. First, you can't stand like that. You look like a security guard. You have to look softer." Arthur looked utterly lost. "Softer?" "Yeah, like, slump a little and smiles. We need to work on the smiles." For the next hour, I watched the surreal spectacle of my 6-year-old daughter coaching one of the city's most powerful men on how to look human. She made him hold her teddy bear to practice holding things gently. She critiqued his handshake. Too scary. He took it all with bizarre seriousness. He asked clarifying questions. He nodded gravely when she explained that dads are supposed to know how to fix bruised knees. At one point, he sat awkwardly on our sagging couch, gingerly avoiding a sticky patch of spilled juice. He looked around our messy, vibrant home, his eyes lingering on a framed photo of Lily and me laughing on a beach. For a split second, the granite facade seemed to crack, revealing something tired and yearning underneath. The thaw before the storm. The change over the next 24 hours was subtle, but seismic. That evening, Lily kicked her soccer ball over the fence again. Usually, this meant the ball was gone forever, absorbed into the black hole of the Sterling estate. We heard the back door of number 42 open. Arthur stepped out, having traded his suit jacket for a cashmere cardigan, though he still wore the tie. He spotted the ball in his perfect rhododendrons. Instead of calling his landscaper or ignoring it, he walked over, picked it up with 2 fingers and walked to the hedge. Lily ran over. "Thank you, Mr. Arthur." He looked down at her. He didn't smile, but the severe line of his mouth softened. "If you are to be my daughter tomorrow, you must learn better aim. We cannot have a family reputation for poor athleticism." He dropped the ball over the fence. Later that night, I was taking out the trash. He was standing on his balcony in the dark, looking out over the suburban quiet. "Mrs. Daniels," his voice floated down. I looked up. "Sarah, please, Mr. Sterling." "Arthur," he corrected. There was a long pause. "She is a very determined child." "She is that," I agreed, smiling into the dark. "Thank you for doing this, Arthur. You have no idea what it means to her." He didn't respond immediately. He just gave a stiff nod and turned back inside. It wasn't a warm embrace, but coming from the iceberg, it was practically a hug. Showtime in room 1B. Friday morning arrived with nauseating tension on my part. I dressed Lily in her best dress. I put on my only blazer. We arrived at the school, the air thick with the smell of floor wax and anxiety. Room 1B was full of parents. There were dads in firefighters' uniforms, dads in tech bro hoodies, moms holding bobbies. It was a noisy, happy, chaotic mess of families. At 9:58 a.m., the door opened and the room went quiet. Arthur Sterling walked in. He looked like he had taken a wrong turn on the way to a G7 summit. His suit was immaculate. His shoes shone like mirrors. He held his briefcase in one hand and a small, unfamiliar paper bag in the other. Every parent stared. They knew who he was from the news. A murmur went through the room. What is Arthur Sterling doing in a first-grade classroom? He ignored them all. His eyes scanned the room until they landed on Lily. He walked straight to her, ignoring the tiny chairs he had to navigate around. "Good morning, Lily," he said formally. "You're late," she whispered loudly, "and you didn't wear the duck tie." He almost looked sheepish. "I do not own a duck tie, however," he held up the paper bag. "I brought the required snack contribution. Organic fruit snacks. Is this acceptable?" Lily peered into the bag. "Okay, good job." He stood next to her, stiff as a board, towering over the pint-sized furniture. He looked terrified. It was the most endearing thing I had ever seen. The speech. Lily's turn came. She marched to the front of the room, dragging her family tree poster, with Arthur trailing behind her like an oversized bodyguard. "This is my tree," she announced. "This is my mommy. She designs cool pictures on the computer and makes the best spaghetti." She pointed to the space where she had glued a photo she'd taken of Arthur when he wasn't looking. It was a grainy shot of him getting out of his car, looking grumpy. "And this is Mr. Arthur. He lives next door in the big glass house. He's a billionaire, which means he has a lot of money but no ducks." The other parents chuckled nervously. Arthur didn't flinch. "He is my pretend daddy for today," Lily continued blithely. "Because my real one got lost a long time ago. Mr. Arthur is helping me fill the branch." The room went dead silent. The sweetness and sadness of it hung in the air. Lily looked up at Arthur. "Your turn. You have to say what a daddy does." This was it. The moment I feared. I expected him to say something cold about financial provision or discipline. Arthur stepped forward. He looked out at the sea of 6-year-olds and judgmental parents. He took a deep breath, and for the first time his shoulders slumped just a fraction, like Lily had taught him. "A father," he began, his voice slightly tight. He looked down at Lily, then over at me sitting in the back row. "I have observed," he continued, his voice gaining strength, "that a parent does not merely provide capital. A parent endures noise. They embrace chaos. They accept sticky hands upon clean surfaces. They listen to stories that make very little narrative sense." He paused. The room was rapt. "A parent shows up," Arthur Sterling said softly, "even when they are terrified, even when they do not know the lines. They stand in the gap. That is what I have learned from my neighbors at number 40. He looked down at Lily. "And I am honored to be a branch on Lily's tree today." I started crying. I couldn't help it. The firefighter dad next to me sniffled. Lily just beamed. The drive home and the smile. The rest of the presentations were a blur. When it was over, Arthur insisted on driving us home. We sat in the back of his cavernous black town car, the leather smelling like money. Lily was exhausted, curled up against my side, clutching her poster. Arthur sat in the front with his driver. The silence was different now. It wasn't heavy, it was companionable. As we pulled into our street, the driver slowed down. I saw Arthur looking in the rearview mirror, watching Lily sleep. "She was excellent," he said quietly. "You were the one who was excellent, Arthur," I said. "You didn't have to say those things." He turned slightly in his seat. "I only spoke the truth. My house is very quiet, Sarah. Too quiet, I realized this week." We pulled into his driveway. The driver opened our door. As I lifted a sleeping Lily out, Arthur came around to help steady me. We stood between our two houses, the messy bungalow and the glass fortress. "Thank you," I whispered. Arthur looked at me, then down at the sleeping child in my arms. And then it happened. The corners of his mouth twitched. The granite cracked. A slow, genuine, slightly rusty smile spread across Arthur Sterling's face. It reached his eyes, making them crinkle at the corners. It changed his entire face from a mask into a human being. "You are welcome," he said softly. Perhaps Lily could retrieve her soccer ball herself next time. The gate code is 1234. The wealth of connection. We didn't become a fairy tale family overnight. Arthur didn't suddenly start wearing Hawaiian shirts and barbecuing with us every weekend. He was still a busy, often stern man who valued order. But the ice had broken. The gate between our worlds remained unlocked. Lily would sometimes wander over to his pristine patio to do her homework, and I would occasionally find Arthur sitting there with her, awkwardly holding a crayon, listening as she explained the complex social hierarchy of her stuffed animals. He started waving when he saw me getting the mail. Once, when my car broke down, he had it towed and repaired without asking, brushing off my thanks with a gruff, "Can't have the daddy branch associated with unreliable transport." Arthur Sterling had billions in the bank, but he had been living in poverty for years, starved of connection, hiding behind walls of glass and silence. It took a 6-year-old girl with a ridiculous request to show him that true wealth isn't what you hoard in a vault. It's the messy, noisy, terrifying willingness to show up for someone else. He taught Lily that families can be built in unexpected ways, and she taught the billionaire next door how to smile.